one of the reasons you wanted to run for judge was because you saw some of the current judiciary not treating defendants with respect.
Yes, sir.
This week we saw the sentencing of Larry Nassar up in Michigan, Dr. Larry Nassar,
yes,
for sexually abusing many of the members of the USA Gymnastics and several other young women. And what we saw was the state proceeding up in Michigan, where they allowed 156 victims to come and testify, and the judge.
It was federal, wasn't it federal?
So that's part of what I want to get to is first he had his federal sentence, which he got 60 years federally.
Right.
And then he went to be sentenced by the state court judge. So of course we saw this, and there's been a lot of debate both on Twitter and on Facebook about that judge's actions, the way she was doing, the comments, the throwing of his letter that he wrote to her. I signed your death warrant. It's an honor to be able to sentence you. Some of the comments that she made about if I could, we don't allow cruel and unusual punishment, but if I could, I would let multiple people sexually abuse you the way you sexually abused.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that.
That one was out there too.
Okay.
And so there was this debate on both sides that, a lot of people, including a lot of lawyers, felt she was over the top, that she was just drawing a lot of attention to herself by allowing this many victims to testify, by televising it, by the things she said. And a lot of other people were like, no, she has the absolute right to do that. He's pled guilty. She at that point, she loses her neutral arbiter hat.
Right.
For me, I kind of see both sides of it.
I do too.
And I do think that a judge, once somebody has pled guilty, all bets are off. Okay.
Right.
At that point, I'm not sure that, and I've been there. I mean, I've seen a lot of judges say things to my clients that you're like, ugh, this is uncomfortable. And it happens. But at the same time, what I didn't like about her was not what she said. Because frankly, I agree with some of the words she said. What he did to those women,
inexcusable. Terrible.
And I kind of frankly agree with the, hey, if I could, I'd sentence you to get sexually molested by a bunch of people. I mean, part of me is like, yeah, I agree with that. What I don't agree with, though, is the level of attention and kind of her attitude, the throwing of the theatrics of the whole thing, almost as if she was trying to audition to be the next Judge Judy or something like that. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that because, if you get to become a judge, you're going to have to sentence people.
Right.
Sentence people who have pled guilty. Sentence people who have lost at trial.
Yes, sir.
And everybody you talk to, whether it's a federal judge or a state court judge, they all say that sentencing is sometimes the hardest part of the job.
Right.
And so I want to get your thoughts on what happened in Michigan and what you mean by respect for defendants.
So the Michigan thing kind of, I look at it with two hats. I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? And then I'm also a person that's running to be a candidate and hopefully a judge one day. As a defense attorney, if that was my client, I'd be really upset. But at the same time, I'm not too thrilled if I was to be a fellow judge for somebody making those type of comments. This guy pled guilty to some really monstrous, really terrible stuff for like 30 years. But at the same time, your job is to carry out what you think is an appropriate sentence, right? But all the extra stuff, I don't think, I'm not comfortable with that, I guess is lack of my better term. I'm trying to find a nicer way to put it. But, I thought it was a little crazy, the letter that he wrote. Like, I've had clients file pro se stuff, and I kind of look at it, and I probably feel a little bit like, depending on what it says, a lot of times they say my lawyer's not coming to see me, and I go see him pretty often, right? But I don't know why all that was done in the way it was. I feel like she was probably trying to go way to the other side because of how many victims and what all was involved. I mean, I guess absent murder, that's probably as serious as the type of offenses as we have, and it spanned, 160 some odd victims or something?
I would argue that's worse than murder. I frankly would, because
right, because they live with
honestly, with murder, your victim's dead. They're not enduring the pain for the rest of their
life.
And so I would argue that this is actually worse than murder.
Yeah, it's arguable. I mean, and I can see your point, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, right? But her doing all that other stuff, I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
I think now let's be realistic. I'm running for a criminal county court at law bench, right? The largest offense, well, I guess it depends on what you consider to be more serious, is like your DWI seconds, your domestic violences, burglary, motor vehicle, the capital misdemeanor, right? But so the most anybody could get is up to a year, right? Yeah. So I don't think if I were to be on that bench, that I'm going to be anywhere near that position, right? At some point, somebody close to me had tried to get me to consider doing a district court bench, which is a felony bench, as we all know.
Yeah.
I'm not really comfortable with something like that for the simple fact of, one, I've only been licensed 10 years, okay? So I think people that are taking those heavy hitter jobs should be in the trenches a long time, whether they be a prosecutor or a defense attorney or both, right? And frankly, I'm not comfortable with, potentially sentencing somebody to the rest of their life.
How about death?
I couldn't even begin to tell you the gravitas that would be put on a person to make that type of decision, or potentially, even if it's already been decided, signing somebody's death warrant.
Right.
Right? You're, in a sense, with a pen taking somebody's life, and that makes me very nervous.